I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Secretary, will you take roll?
I love my roll sheet. One moment, please. Chair Burton,
Present.
Commissioner Puppy, Commissioner Ragsdale,
Here.
Commissioner Kupsick,
Here.
Vice Chair Damasio, Commissioner Vassler,
Here.
Commissioner Trupiano, Alternate Hester, Alternate Manuel, Alternate Belshie, and Alternate McDonald.
Thank you. Let's get ready to go to work. Number 2, workshop agenda 2A, presentation and discussion of the draft housing action plan. This item will include a staff presentation, commission discussion, and time for questions. Commission may provide input and suggest modifications, but no formal action is required. Andrea, please take it away.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioner. As you know, I'm Andrea Marquez, one of the senior planners in Development Services, and we did not go back in time. I am just using the original slide set that we used at council, but I'll be using my own notes. And as a reminder, it is a workshop. You know, do feel free to interrupt or ask questions. I don't think I'll take more than 30 minutes to go through the slide. I do want to touch on, why we're doing all of this and everything. So, as you know, the City of Buckeye is working with a consultant, which is Matrix, and we've been working with Lainey Corey and Michael Wright. You'll see their pictures up on the PowerPoint. So they are helping us guide us through this process of the Housing Action Plan, and which is basically our roadmap to how Buckeye will be addressing housing needs now and into the future. So this plan is required by the state and supports the City Council's strategic goal. So our big picture direction on how we want to move forward with any future policies or implementation. So we did kick off the housing needs assessment, which was reported to Arizona Department of Housing, and that was earlier in January of 2025. So we've actually been working with the League of Cities, with MAG, and with our consultants since last year's October to get the data for our housing needs assessment, which we also got a grant for a housing action plan. Now, keep in mind, this is the first housing action plan that the city has had. So always welcome any comments. I kind of want to keep this, the plan isn't supposed to, be policy. It's more of a guide for us right now and see how we would like to move forward. So I do want to mention we were fortunate enough to receive a grant from MAG in order to do the housing action plan. This is a collaborative effort. I've had a lot of help with staff here in DSD, with Matrix, with our Human Services Department, and also our Neighborhood Services Manager as well, with a lot of our outreach. The document that you did receive that Carrie has sent out, that is our second draft, and believe me, we had more comments. They will be providing a final draft at the end of October. So we are still currently providing, reviewing, and accepting any comments. So, and we thank any of you that Commissioner Vassler, he provided comments as well. So I took those into account, forwarded those over to our consultant. So, today, again, just an overview of the process and the plan. Again, it's in draft form. Does Commission, and we're going to be asking Council, do they support the proposed policy direction? Are there any priorities that we want elevated? such as workforce housing, senior housing, affordable housing, or affordable rentals. The final draft, again, will come before council for final adoption, and I will go into the PowerPoint. I have a long introduction for myself, so. Let's see.
Andrea, may I ask a question? Are we required to do this now because of our population has gone up, or is it?
So it is a state mandate, and yes, our population does trigger that. So I think the threshold was like 60,000. So there's a lot of smaller communities that are struggling with this because there's a lot of mandates. It's a lot of work to, move forward with. So yes, it is, and it has been on the council's strategic goal ever since, we did pass that threshold. So this was the first year we had to report to Arizona Department of Housing regarding our housing needs assessment. And part of that, we should have a housing action plan to go along with that data.
From one just procedural favor, if before you ask a question, welcome as many questions as possible. Could you just say your name really quickly because the recording is not going to know who you are.
That was Deanna.
Thank you. In the next 30 minutes, we'll do the project overview, housing needs assessment, the existing conditions that we have here in the city on implementing and where we're at, following our policies in the housing action plan, the type of community engagement that was required, and then also some more detail into the housing action plan and Q&A. As I mentioned, these are our consultants that we are currently working with. We kind of went over this in our introduction, understanding both the housing needs assessment and our housing action plan. I like to call it the HAP plan, so halfway is happy, right? Council, we will be asking for council feedback on the implementation priorities and then what the next steps for staff will be. Okay. So really quickly, project overview. First, it involved data collection and analysis. So that went over demographic, economic conditions, housing stock, housing market demand. They also provided us with the GIS site suitability analysis that was part of the document. We did go out and do community engagement, which also included an open house at the landing. And then we also had a separate request from the senior citizens because they could not make that meeting, so we had a separate meeting at the senior center as well. And then our housing action plan, again, is what Matrix is helping in, what you saw dropped of, just going over policy recommendations, funding mechanisms, and implementation guidance. So I would like you to keep in mind, this is our first, just attempt at this. So, some of these policies or implementations, they may not fit our community at this time. So, if there are any concerns, I welcome that, or, you have any other experience that, well, maybe this idea will work better for our situation. We need to be able to implement that and put that into this plan. Just kind of a guideline to let us, give us some ideas. So the report elements, so the report will address challenges. So it does talk about the rising housing costs, which, we've all been affected by that. Buckeye has always been a place where, people, they drive out here, they love the area, and the houses are affordable. I don't see that as much anymore. So definitely some rising house costs, limited housing diversity, and again, it's, that's all based on the market. So, we, as a city, we really don't have a lot of control over that. And then also the need for more attainable and affordable options. So that just kind of dives back into diversity housing. So this document is advisory, and it will not dictate where housing will be built. It will not force neighborhood changes and it will only focus on new developments.
Yeah, just to add to the limiting housing diversity bullet point. Now, this is, the demographic data that this is using is mostly from 2022. So from 2000-ish to 2022, Buckeye built a lot of single-family homes, and there weren't many multifamily projects or anything of that sort completed during that time. What this is not reflecting, and what future updates will, is as we get updated data, is the stuff that we've approved, that the Planning and Zoning Commission has approved, Council has approved over the last couple of years. So we would expect that based on all the stuff that we've been doing, a lot of these quote-unquote problematic areas are probably starting to get better already. It's just not reflected yet.
And to actually touch on that, so the housing needs assessment was actually data based off of our 2024 data. So after we collected all of that, and that included housing stock, rental costs, the numbers that came back, of course, you know, Buckeye has a rapid population. It's at 134% growth since 2010. Our housing stock was dominated by large single-family homes. 83% were 3+ bedrooms. The rental costs and home values were rising with affordability pressures across, you know, all income levels. And so what the housing needs assessment that we reported to Arizona Department of Housing, and which is also public record at the League of Cities for all of the cities, including Buckeye, it did identify Buckeye with a shortage of 2,840 units today and projected to grow up to 11,000 units by 2029. So that should be the focus of this policy plan on how do we start bringing in more diversity of housing so there's not this shortage. And again, the housing needs assessment was compiled of data regarding how many plots do we have entitled, how many lots, how many were actually built, how many permits were pulled. So there was a lot of different data that was able to get us these final numbers and, you know, to be able to predict our growth. Yes,
This is Deanna. So, it says where we're short, but does it say what category we're short in? Single family, multifamily, rentals, that kind of stuff? Does that data reflect that, or?
Correct. It just says that we're, you know, and we see it, we do have a lot of single family. As Ken mentioned, the market has shifted a bit, so we see a little bit more of the built to rent, more multifamily. We're going to be getting a new assisted living facility as well. But one of the big ahas I found in the report is we're also lacking move-up housing. And that, you know, when we start getting those professionals, or let's just say that, you know, you worked, you know, within the jurisdiction and you've been at your job for 20+ years and you want to upgrade, do we even have that housing right now for our population? So I really wanted the plan to focus on attainability across the board. So, and even looking at the affordability component as well, because we don't want to get to a point where we're like, oh, we need to start planning for affordable housing. We want to be able to make sure that our community is sustainable in housing so that we have that diversity. And we continue our growth and the workforce and all of that good stuff. So, let's see what else. So,
Excuse me,
yes.
Andrea, this is Teddy Burke. We keep throwing the word out affordable. Help me understand that. Because what's affordable to me may not be affordable to the next person. So what does that mean?
Yes, so so I did make sure that, because of the first draft we received, it kept saying affordable housing. That's the way the state bill was written. We need to address affordable housing. I wanted to make sure that this plan talked about attainable housing, because then it covers all all walks of life, right? Just wherever stage you are. And we have a pretty young population. So there is also language in here which was not, I don't believe it was part of your draft, but I also wanted there to be a section for affordable public housing. So there's that distinction of affordability. And then, but that's where the policies go in. You know, does the city start investing in land? Do we start taking more interest in partnerships? You know, so that's what this guide should help us. But yes, so when we're talking, I'm hoping that the document is clear enough that we're asking about attainability, and then also there's a component of affordability. But I do have some numbers on that.
And just to add, like, the metric that the data uses is AMI, which is average to median income. So something that 80% or 90% of the population in Buckeye can afford, and not meaning spending 100% of your paycheck on your mortgage, but you know, a reasonable amount that would not be considered typically affordable. It might be considered attainable. Whereas, you know, something that's more geared to, you know, 30%, somebody 30% below the average median income in the area, you know, would need something quote unquote affordable, which is probably below market value for rent and those things.
Actually, I have those numbers, because I really,
Setting you
like, you would think that we planned this, right? So when you're talking about affordability, you know, the golden rule is try not to spend more than 30% of your income, right? Because you still have your other living expenses, you know, food and, you know, entertainment and being able to spend the money in your community. So if you look at the plan, the data says that the median income for Buckeye is $98,000. Now, with everyone making $98,000, I would say at our population at the younger age, we're not quite all making, you know, that top tier. Yes, Deanna?
Is that number per household or per person?
Per household.
Okay.
So in regards to the 98,000, if you're gonna break it down to 30%, that goes to your mortgage rate, taxes and insurance. 2,450 per month should go to your rent or to your mortgage. And you're like, okay, that's attainable, right? Maybe. But then if you're making 60,000, that rule, you should only be spending anywhere from 1,400 to 1,500 per month. So now I'm starting to think, I don't think I've seen rents or mortgages that low. So then I'm like, okay, let me do some more math. So in today's market, you can afford a house using that 30% if you found a house for 200,000 or 240,000.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, you know, and then you're looking at, okay, it's at a good interest rate, 6.5, your 20% down payment. So your safe budget for someone making 60,000, which I would say was more average, right? Even for your workforce employees that are out here, you could afford 1,500 a month. But if you want to buy a house that is 400,000, which is really on the lower end of the housing market right now, you would need to, if you were making 60,000 and you're using your 30%, you would need to be able to come up with $2,400 a month. Is that affordable? So when we use the word affordable, I want to make sure that in the document, it's talking about attainable, is it affordable for our residents here? But there'll also be a component in here talking about affordable public housing as well.
So there is a difference.
Absolutely, yes. I think we as a community, you know, if we were a bigger community, maybe our housing needs, our housing action plan would need to focus on affordable housing. And most of you should know, we do have affordable housing here in Buckeye, just on Mahoney and 4th, I believe, and that is managed by Maricopa County. And then in the document as well, we have some of the apartment complex and some other facilities that do get federal funding for rental assistance and so forth. But as a city, do we have a true affordable housing product? We do not. But I also wanted that to be in the plan to make sure that, you know, if we ever did get to that point, that, you know, we have some guidelines.
I think, just to add, Andrea's doing great, so I don't feel like I need to add, but just a little more color. Most of the projects that we've seen, multifamily projects that have come forward, I would say 80% of them have been market rate. So no rent control component, no leasing to only, you know, persons below a certain income level. Just it was, you know, highest bidder wins the unit. We've probably had we've had 2 or 3 projects over the last couple of years that have been low-income housing tax credit projects, where a certain percentage, or in some cases the entire complex, but a certain percentage of units at least, are reserved for people below a 60% or a 50% income level.
And are all of those in Old Town Buckeye?
We had just had one approved, your project.
Yuma and Apache.
Yeah, Yuma and Apache is one that's outside of it, but 2 in downtown, yes. So those are very different than what Andrea is talking about when she talks about government housing. A lot of people think of the term Section 8, which just means government gives you a voucher and you turn it into the landlord and you don't pay it. Like, it's just, you're done, it's free. Those have a bad reputation, you know, for probably some valid and some invalid reasons. In this case, it's just discounted rent for residents that are below a certain income level.
And these are multifamily projects, not,
Yes, there's not really a single family. I mean, you could do that type of model with a single family type of unit, but as far as purchasing a home, you're talking about different types of incentives to try to get folks maybe below the average income level into a home to own, which is something we want to do. And Andrea will talk about some strategies there.
because years ago, there was a farmer's home, UDA or some
Oh, yeah, farm home,
farm homes, yeah.
where you could buy it.
You could buy a house and payments were feasible, it got you into a house and you could go into it.
But I think that was more of a rural
Okay.
project.
And there are various, you know, if you're a veteran, obviously there are programs available to you. There, you know, if you work for a certain company, they might have their own, but there's not necessarily something that applies for everybody within the city. That's what we could potentially look at doing through this plan, or at least identifying what we might want to look further into. This plan's not going to say we're doing this. This is just going to say this is stuff we need to study more, basically.
I think, you know, to approach, not saying that if you have a problem, but to approach something, and also to avoid getting to a problem, you need to have that research and that data. So this way you can always say, okay, our housing, you know, is our population dropping? Why? Is it that they can't find affordable housing here? Is there not jobs here? Is there, so, you know, it's always, I think that's why these policies are good. Sorry, for us to always have an update, because then you always have that data and you can start seeing trends and you can see where we're making accomplishing our goals or we're not, and where we can, you know, try to fix those. So a big component of the housing action plan was looking at key demographics and housing findings. So as you see up there, some of the highlights, again, Buckeye, relatively young population. We do have a larger than average household sizes. So that just reflects that Buckeye is family oriented in character. Let's see, our household income have risen significantly, outpacing the regional growth. So, you know, those are good markers to be seen here. It does say educational attainment level, they lag slightly. Disability prevalence, particularly among seniors, highlights the growing need for accessible housing options. So again, so this data is pointing us to, you know, the knowns. So this is good to know. We attract a lot of our snowbirds here, but are we going to keep them? You know, what's going to happen? You fall in love in Arizona, you fall in love with Buckeye, you love your neighbors, you love the weather. But then if they're, you know, now you've just outlived or your rent is gone skyrocketed, where can you go? Do we provide any of that diversity here? So, and then the policy also helps builders look and say, well, what does Buckeye want and need? And it kind of gives them a guideline as well. Because I know in the past, we said we didn't want multifamily, but we kind of need it. We do need it for, you know, that workforce that's coming in. But, you know, maybe 20 years ago, multifamily wouldn't have been part of the suggestion in here. It would have been, our outlook would have looked a little differently. I think I already mentioned most of our housing stock here, we have 3+ bedrooms, 83% units in 2022. So that's a pretty large amount. With the limited availability of smaller units, 0 to 1 bedrooms at 2% and 2 bedrooms at 15%. So right there, that just shows we just need to add diversity to our portfolio here in Buckeye for housing.
Andrea, but isn't the trend kind of downsizing it? You know, they're in the 80s, 90s, whatever, it was the McMansions, you know, everything was bigger and better and that kind of stuff. Is it getting, and whether that's true or not, will these policies reflect trends in the housing market or that kind of stuff? I don't know if that's a legitimate question or, because it does fluctuate some.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and the hard part of that question is I'm gonna get myself in trouble. What percentage of the trends are being driven by the buyers, and what percentage of the trends are being driven by the home builders? Because they're only doing a certain thing, and you have no choice but to buy X, Y, and Z. So, at risk of annoying our home builder partners, you know, I think there's certainly some people, I don't want to say it's a huge percentage, that want something different than what they see out there. So that's a challenge that we're trying to work with.
Thank you.
As mentioned, I'm just going to see if I have any other notes here. As mentioned, it is required to do community engagement. We did have a resident survey. We had it in Spanish and in English. We pushed it across social media. We pushed it across our seniors community meeting that we had in May. I worked with Janine, and she was feet on the pavement at festivals and any type of event that was out, even out in Festival and Tartesso, so a lot of good outreach. I will say some of the data is skewed because we did get so much involvement from the senior citizens that day. But again, it just brought to our attention, I don't think if they were involved, we wouldn't have a lot of the language in here in talking about how do we address, you know, our aging population. Because I actually just got a call from someone in Victory, and she was unaware of the assisted living facility that's coming in, and she goes, I love my community, my family is here, you know, my church is here, all my stores are here, and I would hate to have to move out if there was at one point that my family would need to put me in memory care. You know, I still want them to come visit me because they live here, and not have an excuse not to visit.
That facility is very well needed, has been for years.
Absolutely. Okay, so in regards to the document, again, it just outlines strategies and goals to address identifying housing needs, proposes specific actions, and I do have it here, we can go over a few, guides policy decisions and resource allocation. And I think one of the biggest things too, because this is a new policy guide, and it touches lightly on here, but this also starts a conversation. Who's responsible for this? You know, which department is going to, you know, implement a lot of these policies, but also order the collaboration, you know, in regards to Janine and Christian. We have been meeting with Habitat for Humanity because all of a sudden there is an interest. We just met with the Housing Builder Institute, and they were from DC.
DC, primary Denver, but they are out of Phoenix, Build Strong Academy.
So again, just talking about partnerships in regards to providing workforce education regarding carpentry and building. So, you know, those are a lot of good, you know, policies and implementations that we can put in this plan. But, you know, who do we need to dedicate that? You know, do we need a separate division? Do we, you know, just do it collab through, you know, across different departments? You know, how do we want to be able to handle these questions that are starting to come to Buckeye? Because you don't want people to be, you know, contacting one person in one department, getting an answer, and then talking to someone else. And you really want us to all be working together so the program is successful and networking and you get a better product.
In other communities, how do they handle that?
It's mixed. Yeah, a lot of times, but not always. You'll see a department that kind of focuses on resident services, social services type of stuff. But in some places, it's a function of their finance departments or planning departments. It's mixed.
Yeah. And
Excuse me.
And as if you're not aware, community services, and I think it's 1 year, we have a human services department or division. So that's brand new. And, you know, their main focus is social services. The housing needs assessment plan also talks about what the city can do. We wanted to highlight some of the actions that we already implementing, which we do have reduced fees in downtown, in the downtown boundaries. It doesn't just focus on affordable housing or housing, it does touch anything within our downtown boundary. You know, do we want to get very specific on, you know, reducing more fees or how we handle residential moving forward in our downtown area? We are also moving toward community development block grant entitlement. So right now we're under Maricopa County as a non-entitlement receiving CDBG funds for our low to moderate income area. So this will be a good opportunity to maybe use some of those resources towards affordable housing or attainable housing. We're also, Mandy has been working on our development code updates, and a lot of that's been state mandated as well. And we do address, I think, a lot of diversity opportunities in our housing. You know, I don't think we restrict a type of housing here that, you know, we're not in compliance with the state bill. Our CMPs, I think we have more than 27 of them. They already voluntarily, you know, have density bonuses in their CMPs, so they wanted a higher density in certain areas. You know, that's allowable.
Did you say density bonuses?
Density bonuses. So they may have maybe on their land use plan, you know, medium density, a higher density, and they may want to shift uses and even have an allowance for however they have it written in development standards, they may be allowed to do a density bonus, so depending on what that requirement is for in the same fee.
I just had never heard that term before.
Basically, density beyond what our base code might allow in a particular district.
Compliance with recent housing state legislation. Again, this is part of it. The housing needs assessment data collection, and also doing the housing action plan and updating our development code. And we are also exploring streamlining final plats. So what that means for the city is they will be administrative and no longer need to come through planning and zoning and council.
So all final plats, or just housing? Or,
I believe all for the final.
Yeah.
so we won't need planning and zoning anymore?
Well, planning and zoning wasn't reviewing final plat already. They were going to council on consent agendas. So they would be taken off the council consent.
Will they still be reviewing pre-plats?
Preliminary plats are required to go to administrative also by the state statute. So that is something that P&Z has been reviewing, that per the new state law, we won't be taking forward to you.
Is that all just to, Warren Peterson's plan to just, you know, eliminate all planning whatsoever, or?
No comment. I hope not.
Well, not friends, but, okay.
We hope not. We think, you know, some of this, I guess we can be cynical from time to time, but some of this stuff, just taken by itself, are understandable measures. There is a long process to do something, to build something, and a lot of that is because the state requirements have been a certain way and required so many steps along the way. So, you know, something takes 5 or 6 months to get it up, from start to finish. That seems like a lot of time to some folks. So, eliminating a meeting requirement, if it can shave off a month, I can see the benefit to that. It does have the downside of having less input and feedback, understandable to be concerned. And then if you look at our neighbors, California, the same process takes 2 years in a lot of cases. So it's all relative. I didn't think we were doing too bad, but somebody's always complaining.
Apparently we don't. Thank you.
Just a couple more minutes left, and I think I just have, so in regards to some of the policy implementation strategies that our consultant has suggested was, and it was in our report, the catalytic development areas, identifying those, to add more of the missing middle housing, doing that bonus, the density bonuses, and that would be in our downtown area, and then also at the landing activity area as well. So those were identified in our housing action plan. So if there's any development incentives that were in the report that you want to discuss, I'm not going to repeat them all or go through them. Again, development code updates, and I think just, this will be a document that we'll always be revising and revisiting. And you talk about accessory dwelling units, which we're already in compliance with our development code. One of the things we did ask them to add is look into down payment assistance, like what types of programs are available for that. And again, the human services there is like, where do we want this program to live, when we grow up? Who should we, have as that main point of contact? So I do know, just from experience, Habitat for Humanity had looked on our website and they contacted everyone in the city because they could not find someone, their point of contact. And I think at the stage of, where we're at, we shouldn't have someone trying to search, who can help them and build those partnerships and relationships with. Are there any of the implementation or strategy suggestions that you would like to discuss or go over?
Don Vassler, my question really relates to future building. I just broke ground west of here for 100,000 homes. How does that fit into what you got here? 100,000 homes sounds like a pretty big number to me right now. And so that's a whole nother development area that's in Buckeye that's going on. So how does this plan kind of dove into what they are doing? This plan helped me understand why in the last couple of years we've been approving a lot of multifamily units because we didn't have any. And it's a shortage, and that the report points that out. It makes me feel a little better about all the multifamily stuff we've been approving. Seems like residential homes were going away and everything was multifamily that we were approving. So the report was very eye-opening from that standpoint. One of the things that we did approve just east of Verrado Way was an experiment with small homes on small lots for people to purchase. I hope that type of an experiment would continue on, allowing people to start building some equity in small homes so that they can, in fact, get their feet on the ground and get into that. And to the extent that we can somehow encourage that type of thing, I think that would be extremely, extremely positive, because for young people, and that's what we're attracting in Buckeye right now, is young people. That's what's coming in. And so the fact that we can get them some type of way to build some equity, that type of housing would be very, very helpful. The thing that it did point out, and maybe that's because there was a lot of people that were 65 and over, we have a horrible absence of senior living facilities. I'm not talking necessarily seniors, I'm talking about like the facility that's being built right now on Yuma and Sundance Parkway, where you have a senior facility that will take care of you for life through stages of that. And we're missing that here. That is definitely an area that Buckeye right now does not have the facilities to do so. I thought the report was excellent, especially the first report that we've done. It's a very comprehensive and complete report and very eye-opening on several issues. So I think it was very helpful. My question is, how do we move forward with this report when basically builders come in and build what they want to build? The 100,000 homes that are going to be built west of here, I don't know how much influence we're going to have on what they build. They do that, and so it's a great report. I just want to know how we incorporate that into what we do into the future.
Yeah, maybe I'll take the first crack at that. With any private property, we can't compel an owner to develop a certain type of housing if the zoning allows for multiple things. You know, if you have zoning that allows for single family and multifamily, we could say we prefer single family there or we prefer multifamily there. But at the end of the day, it's their decision. I think the ability that the city has is to make developing things maybe easier or cheaper, to incentivize it, or to, oh my God, I lost my train of thought. Or to provide, assistance when it comes to, if we wanted to have people build the smaller for ownership product that you talked about, maybe home buyers assistance programs, down payment assistance programs, are the way to go, to get, because even for that $200,000 house, you still need a down payment. Some folks just don't have it. So, you know, I think our role is more in that rather than compelling somebody to build something. It's more encouraging via, you know, finances and stuff like that.
Ken Tedberger, question. Where does the down payment assistance come from? Or is that something that you all search out to find?
I'm sorry, where does the down payment?
Assistance come from, the monies for the down payment assistance? Is that something that you all will search out? Or is that something that the city will take on? How does that work?
It's very vague in here, but I think that's where, you know, this is where we start having those conversations with, maybe it's another municipality, or if it's a nonprofit, or, you know, do a request for information. But then again, if that's not something that we're interested in, then we wouldn't take those extra steps.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of places it could come from. Potentially even CDBG funds could be used for something like that. It could come out of the general fund. I mean, there's a lot of potential ideas. Nobody's decided. Nobody's decided that we're even going to have that program yet. And if we do, exactly how it will function.
But it sounds like a good program to make us a more well-rounded community. But I do worry about that. You know, my son's 31, how's he ever gonna afford to buy a house when they're 500,000 as a starter house? It's crazy. When I bought my first house, it was $24,000, so, you know.
Well, if there's no other discussion, if all hearts and minds are clear,
Just saying. Don't be in a hurry, Ken.
We do need to make sure to get to the
Most-
regular meeting on time, just so the commission's aware.
Yeah. Most of, the last page of the document is a density map, talking about where housing is most desirable to do. Most of that focuses obviously right here in the area that we're sitting in right now, because it has all the commercial establishments and everything else that we need. For Buckeye to grow and to continue to have the land mass that the development of housing, like the 100,000 homes that are being built, we've got to get more commercial in outside of this area. Who is looking at being able to get those types of things up the Parkway so that there is that place to do more housing than just downtown Buckeye, because we're obviously here using most of our farmer fields right now in new housing. So we're going to run out of that. So what is happening up the Parkway?
I will say all the CMPs that are in place up there, Teravalis being the biggest one, or Florio, the first phase of Teravalis, and Howard Hughes is now working on the bigger portion behind it to the west, coming in for a CMP amendment. But all of those master plans, Festival even, North Star Ranch was a somewhat contentious one a few years ago. All of those have a mix of housing types, and land designated for multifamily, land designated for single family, of different lot sizes. So I think we're in pretty good shape from a zoning standpoint to continue to kind of grow with diversity of housing. What we can't do is say you have to, restrict your rents on this project. We can't do that. We can say we'd love it if you could, and maybe they would, but it's not something that we can require. Otherwise, you know, the other thing that Andrea mentioned earlier is, it's not just going in the one direction, which is more affordable. We do have, and I share the same exact concern, we want you to stay here long-term, and we hope you're successful as all heck. And if you want to move up to a 4,000 square foot home with, you know, no neighbors on your back, that costs $1 million or 1.5 million, we'd like to have those opportunities for you as well. So I think that's one of the biggest things that I've taken away is when we work on these big master plans, making sure we're not just looking at the density angle, but also the other side of that coin. Verado does a nice job with it. But I think we can get more of that in some of these larger master plans.
But we need the commercial
Yeah.
to support that.
Yes.
I mean, I moved here with Walgreens and Fry's.
Mm-hmm.
That was it.
Yeah.
And that commercial has now come in and is coming in full blast. People up there don't have anything.
Oh, if that's what you're talking about specifically, so, I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Don't cry for them, Argentina.
I can't remember if this one has a non-disclosure. I will just say that there's additional commercial that's coming up north,
Okay, good.
pretty soon.
Good.
For years, we always heard that commercial follows the rooftops and then.
Yes.
And then industrial follows the, you know, it goes that way.
Yes.
Yeah, but I
Now,
think our
Festival
city,
Ranch is its own animal, and Tartesso, because they had the houses, but then they didn't get any.
Mhm.
this is Adam Copeland. I think what we're finding is it's interesting how some of these commercial users make a decision. It's all about the math. Are there seasonal residents? How many months out of the year are they here? But on the planning side, our job is to make sure, as you suggested, to make sure we actually have commercial opportunity instead of zone everything just residential. We need to still have a certain component percentage of commercial employment, those types of uses. And so our economic development department is working hard at trying to, you know, market those places, fill those in along with the brokerage community. But it just depends on the company and the business. We don't have a lot of control over when they make a decision to come, but we do have control over land use and ensuring there is some commercial opportunity. But it's a balance, you know, depending on where you're at, and we don't want folks driving 15 miles to the grocery store, you know, especially a build out, that we wouldn't, you know, I think we would have failed if we have big communities that are 15, 20 miles away from commercial services. So that's what we're going to be thinking about long term, and we're going to be updating our general plan over the next few years. We'll be looking at those elements as well that we get a lot more feedback on, and more market updates on what's going on in that industry.
Mr. Chair Burton, we're gonna have to end the discussion here, but great discussion, robust, I like it, I love the questions. Anyway, let's adjourn and head over to the